Hello everyone, welcome to NCERT 6 to 10 class in short. Today we will be continuing the discussion on the first chapter of grade 6 history, what, where, how and when. So before beginning today's class, let's recall the points learned so far. By learning history, one can know about the food, clothes, houses and lifestyles of our earlier generations. People who lived on the banks of the Narmada river were skilled gatherers. They ate the fruits, roots and leaves of plants. About 8,000 years ago, people in the Suleiman and Kirta hills started to cultivate wheat and barley. They also reared animals like sheep and goats. Rice was first grown to the north of Vindhyas. About 4,700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished on the banks of the river Indus. The area along the south of the river Ganga was known as Magadha, which was a powerful kingdom of those times. Throughout, people traveled from one part of the subcontinent to the other for satisfying various needs. Ideas were shared among people through these journeys. These were the points we have learned so far. Now, before moving on to today's class, if you really like the video, like, share, comment and subscribe the channel. Enable bell icon and click on all to get all the notifications. Now let's move on to today's class. Hills, mountains and seas form the natural frontiers of the subcontinent. When it was difficult to cross these frontiers, those who wandered could and did scale the mountains and cross the seas. People from across the frontiers also came into the subcontinent. These movements of people enriched our cultural traditions. That is, by the movement of these people, our culture has got many innovations. People have shared new ways of carving stones, composing music, and even cooking food. Now let's think of how did the land get its name? That is, how India got its name. The word India comes from the Indus, called Sindhu in Sanskrit, that is from the river Indus. The Iranians and Greeks who came about 2500 years ago were familiar with the Indus, called it the Hindos or Indos, and the land of the east of the river was called India. Another name, Bharat. The name Bharata was used for a group of people who lived in the northwest and who are mentioned in the Rig Veda. Now let's know about Rig Veda. Rig Veda is an ancient collection of Vedic Sanskrit hymns. Actually, there are 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda and Atharva Veda, and Rig Veda is considered as the oldest known Vedic Sanskrit text, dated to about 3,500 years ago. That is, this text is written about 3,500 years ago. So the name came from the people who were mentioned in Rig Veda and it was used for the country. Now let's think of how can we find about the past. What methods can be used? We can learn about the life of past people by many different ways. One method is by searching for and reading the books that were written long years ago. Second one is studying inscriptions. The books that are written long years ago are known as manuscripts. Manuscripts are books, documents or a piece of music written by hand rather than typed or printed. That means handwritten books were known as manuscripts. So almost all the books in the olden days were manuscripts. That means they were written hand. The word manuscript comes from the Latin word manu, meaning hand. Did they have actual book like those of today's? Actually, no. Manuscripts were usually written on palm leaves or on the specially prepared bark of a tree known as birch. These were growing in the Himalayas. So the informations were written on either on palm leaves or on the birch of the trees. This was the way. Here are some photographs of the manuscripts that were used in the olden days. Let's see. Over the years, many manuscripts were eaten away by insects. Some were destroyed, but many have survived. Those survived one may be preserved in temples and monasteries. Here in this photograph, you can see a destroyed manuscript. It may be destroyed by insects or somehow. As it was written on palm leaf, it was very difficult to preserve them properly. Palm leaves may be cut into many pieces and it will be tied together to make a book. it was the way. Now let's think of what will be there in the manuscripts, what was written in the manuscripts. Actually, it dealt with all kinds of subjects like religious beliefs and practices, the lives of king, medicine, science, and there were epics, poems, and even plays. And the language used for writing was mainly Sanskrit, and some people may written it in Prakrit language, that means the language of the ordinary people. Still some written it in Tamil language. These were the languages used for writing manuscripts. Now let's see the second evidence, that is inscriptions. Inscriptions are writings on relatively hard surfaces like stone or metal. Rather than writing in palm leaf, the informations will be written on stones or metal surfaces. It may be difficult to write, but the thing is, it cannot be destroyed so easily by the insects or any other ways. Now let's see some of the inscriptions. Sometimes kings got their orders inscribed so that people could see, read and obey them properly. So kings used inscription for informing others about their orders. Still, there were some other kinds of inscriptions where men and women, including kings and queens, record what they did. For example, kings often kept records of the victories in their battle. Now here you can see an inscription given in your textbook. An old inscription dates to about 2250 years ago and was found in Kandahar, which is in present-day Afghanistan. It was inscribed on the orders of a ruler named Ashoka, whom you will be learning in chapter 8. When we write anything, we use a script. Scripts consist of letters or signs. When we read what is written or speak, we use a language. This inscription was inscribed in two different scripts and languages, Greek at the top and Aramaic in below, which were used in this area. That means the language used in Kandahar. Now think about the advantages of inscribing something in inscriptions. How it would be advantageous for the olden people. Actually, if they have written in palm scripts, they have written, but it is more advantageous, right? Inscriptions are more advantageous than palm leaf because they cannot be destroyed by insects or some other way. Okay, and it had some difficulties too, right? That means writing on metal surfaces, it would be tedious and it would take too much time. And tools should be used very hard. They have to use very sharp tools for writing. These were all the difficulties they might have faced during inscribing. Anyway, this was a strong evidence for us, that means people of today's, for understanding the life of the past. Besides the manuscripts and inscriptions, many other things were also used in the past. Those who study about these subjects are known as archaeologists. An archaeologist is a person who studies human history by excavating and examining physical remains like stone, metal, brick, paintings or sculptures. They also explore and excavate to find tools, weapons, pans, pots, ornaments and coins which may be made of stone, bone, baked clay or metal, which means they make use of all these materials for their study. That means they have to learn about the life of the past people. So every single evidence they are using and they make as a weapon for their study. They also look for bones of fishes, birds and animals to find out what people ate in the past. Plants remain to survive far more rarely. That is, if the seeds of grains or pieces of wood are burnt, they will remain in a charred form. We cannot get enough evidence from plant parts. Historians use the word source to refer to the information found in manuscripts, inscriptions, and archaeology. Once sources are found, learning about the past becomes an adventure as it is reconstructed bit by bit. So, historians are like detectives who use all these clues to find out about our past. So it can be said that Studying about the past is a tedious task. We have a little more to go. We will be meeting in the next video. Until then, bye. Thank you.